Kids, I thought maybe we could read. It's backwards, so sorry about that, but I can't find the other book we're reading right now, so maybe we could start a new one. For now, it's called Redwall, and when I was, I guess, in 6th or 7th grade, I started reading these books, and I thought they were really good. Got into them big time. So I thought you might like it. So let's knock it out. We'll see if we can do a couple chapters. It's about some little mice. It's about mice, and they're they live in a big stone abbey where they have peaceful lives where they help and serve all the other creatures in the woods. And then some bad guys come and do some mean things. So they've got to deal with that. So there you go. There's the art. It's got this tough little mouse with a big silver sword and shield. And it looks like he means business. So just a second. I need to pause you. I'm going to deal with something. Okay. So let us begin. I think you guys gotta like this. Has lots of action and adventure and some fun characters. Okay. Oh, there's a picture. So it's this says Redwall Abbey and surrounding countryside. So there's the Abbey. It looks like a big church, which it is, surrounded by a wall. And below that's a meadow and another church, a smaller church. And then up at the top there's a farm, a river, and a quarry. A quarry is a place where people mine rocks, and they just cut the rocks out for building buildings and roads and things, and lots of woods. So that's what the little area looks like. That's what Redwall Abbey looks like. Okay, let's see. It was the start of the summer of the late rose. Mossflower country shimmered gently in a peaceful haze, bathing delicately at each dew-laden dawn, blossoming through high sunny noontides, languishing in each crimson-tinted twilight that heralded the soft darkness of June nights. Redwall stood foursquare along the marches of the old south border, flanked on two sides by moss-flower woods' shaded depths. The other half of the abbey overlooked undulating sweeps of meadowland, its ancient gate facing the long, dusty road on the western perimeter. From above, it resembled some fabulous, dusky jewel fallen between a green mantle of light silk and dark velvet. The first mice had built the abbey of red sandstone quarried from pits many miles away in the northeast. The abbey building was covered across its south face by that type of ivy known as Virginia creeper. The onset of summer would turn the leaves into a cape of fiery hue, thus adding further glory to the name and legend of Redwall Abbey. So it's called Redwall because it's made of sandstone, and sandstone is red. Book 1, The Wall. Matthias cut a comical little figure as he wobbled his way along the cloisters, with his large sandals flip-flopping on his tail peeping from beneath the baggy folds of an oversized novice's habit. You don't know what a habit is. A habit is what monks wear. Monks are like Catholic priests, and or the men that work for the priests. And here's a picture of one. They're just plain cloth, and they tie a rope around their waist to hold it together, and they have a hood, And that's what is the picture when that's what people used to wear when they worked at like you know like a nun, but for a man, basically a monk. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what they look like. They're just very plain. Okay, and that's what Matthias was wearing, the little mouse monk. He paused to gaze upwards at the cloudless blue sky and tripped over his enormous sandals. Hazelnuts scattered out upon the grass from the rush basket he was carrying. Unable to stop, he went tumbling, cowl over tail. The cowl is the hood part of the habit. Bump! The young mouse squeaked in dismay. He rubbed tenderly his damp, snubbed nose while slowly taking stock of where he landed, directly at the feet of Abbot Mortimer. An abbot is the person who's in charge of the abbey. He's like the boss of everybody. Immediately, Matthias scrambled about on all fours, hastily trying to stuff nuts back into the basket as he muttered clumsy apologies, avoiding the stern gaze of his elder. Sorry, Father Abbot, I tripped, you see? Trod on my abbot, Father Abbot. Oh dear, I mean. The Father Abbot blinked solemnly over the top of his glasses. Matthias again. What a young buffoon of a mouse! Only the other day he had singed old brother Methuselah's whiskers while lighting candles. The elder's stern expression softened. He watched the little novice rolling about on the grass, grappling with large armfuls of the smooth hazelnuts which constantly seemed to escape his grasp. Shaking his old gray head, yet trying to hide a smile, Abbot Mortimer bent and helped to gather up the fallen nuts. "Oh, Matthias, Matthias, my son," he said wearily, "when will you learn to take life a little slower, to walk with dignity and humility? How can you ever hope to be accepted as a mouse of Redwall when you are always dashing about, grinning from whisker to tail like a mad rabbit?" Matthias tossed the last of his hazelnuts into the basket and stood awkwardly shuffling his large sandals in the grass. How could he say aloud what was in his heart? The abbot put his paw around the young mouse's shoulder, sensing his secret yearnings, for he had ruled Redwall wisely over a great number of years and gained much experience of mouse life. He smiled down at his young charge and spoke kindly to him. "Come with me, Matthias. This time we walked together." A curious thrush, perching from a gnarled pear tree, watched the two figures make their way at a sedate pace in the direction of the great hall. One clad in the dark greeny brown of the order, the other garbed in a lighter green of a novice. A novice means somebody that's new at something. And Matthias is a novice at being a monk. I guess he's not really a monk yet. He's like a monk in training. They conversed earnestly in low tones, thinking what a clever bird he was. The thrush swooped down on the basket that had been left behind. Twisters! The basket contained only hard nuts, locked tight within their shells. Faking a lack of interest, lest any other bird that had been witness to his silly mistake, he began whistling jauntily a few bars of his melodious summer song, strolling nonchalantly over to the cloistered walls in search of snails. A cloister, I guess alcove probably isn't very helpful. Basically, if you got a wall and then you got like a space in the wall that you can kind of go back in, it's kind of like set back into it. That's what a cloister is. It's like a recessed area that's cut out or cut into a wall, so you can go in there and hide and stuff. Churches have them. It's for people to be able to sit and think and read or pray or study without taking up all the space in the hall. Okay. It was cool inside the great hall. Sunlight flooded down in slanted rainbow-hued shafts from the high, narrow, stained glass windows. A million colored dust motes danced and swirled as the two mites trod the ancient stone floor. The father abbot halted in front of the wall on which hung a long tapestry. It was the pride and joy of Redwall. The oldest part had been woven by the founders of the abbey, but each successive generation had added to it. Thus the tapestry was not only a priceless treasure, it was also a magnificent chronicle of early Redwall history. A tapestry is like a painting, but it's made out of cloth. And instead of using paint, they use different colored thread woven together to make the pictures. If you remember the movie The Secret Garden, there was a tapestry on the wall. It kind of looked like carpet on the walls, except it was pictures. It was woven cloth and it had pictures of woods and deer and flowers and people. That's a tapestry. So that's what they're looking at, a giant tapestry that covers the whole wall of the Great Hall. The abbot studied the wonderment in Matthias's eyes and asked him a question, the answer to which the wise mouse already knew. What's his voice sound like? What are you looking at, my son? Matthias pointed to the figure woven into the tapestry. It was a heroic-looking mouse with a fearless smile on his handsome face. Clad in armor, he leaned casually on an impressive sword, while behind him foxes, wildcats, and vermin fled in terror. The young mouse gazed in admiration. Oh, Father Abbot, he sighed, if only I could be like Martin the warrior. He was the bravest, most courageous mouse that ever lived. The abbot sat down slowly on the cool stone floor, resting his back against the wall. Listen to what I say, Matthias. You have been like a son to me ever since you first came to our gates as an orphan woodland mouse begging to be taken in. Come, sit by me, and I will try to explain to you what our order is all about. We are mice of peace. Oh, I know that Martin was a warrior mouse, but those were wild days when strength was needed, the strength of a champion such as Martin. He arrived here in the deep winter when the founders were under attack from many foxes, vermin, and a great wildcat. So fierce a fighter was Martin that he faced the enemy single pod, driving them mercilessly far from Mossflower. During the rout, Martin fought a great battle against overwhelming odds. He emerged victorious after slaying the wildcat with his ancient sword, which became famous throughout the land. But in the last bloody combat, Martin was seriously wounded. He lay injured in the snow until mice found him. They brought him back to the abbey and cared for his hurts until he regained his strength. Then something seemed to come over him. He was transformed by what could only be called a mouse miracle. Martin forsook the ways of the warrior and hung up his sword. That was when our order found its true vocation. All the mice took a solemn vow never to harm another living creature, unless it was an enemy that sought to harm our order by violence. They vowed to heal the sick, care for the injured, and give aid to the wretched and the impoverished. So it was written, and so it has been through all the ages of mousekind since. Today we are deeply honored and highly respected society. Anywhere we go, even far beyond Mossflower, we are treated with courtesy by all creatures. Even predators will not harm a mouse who wears the habit of the order. They know he or she is one who will heal and give aid. It is an unwritten law that Redwall mice can go anywhere, through any territory, and pass unharmed. At all times, we must live up to this. It is our way, our very life. As the abbot spoke, his voice increased in volume and solemnity. Matthias sat under his stern gaze, completely humbled. Abbot Mortimer stood and put a wrinkled old paw lightly on the small head, right between the velvety ears, now drooping with shame. Once more the abbot's heart softened towards the little mouse. Poor Matthias, alas for your ambitions. The day of the warriors is gone, my son. We live in peaceful times, thank heaven. And you need only think about obeying me, your abbot, and doing as you are bidden. In time to come, when I am long gone to my rest, you will think back to this day and bless my memory, for then you will be a true member of Redwall. Come now, my little friend, cheer up. It is the summer of the late rose. There are many, many days of warm sun ahead of us. Go back and get your basket of hazelnuts. Tonight we have a great feast to celebrate. My golden jubilee is abbot. When you've taken the nuts to the kitchen, I have a special task for you. Yes, indeed. I need you to find some fine fish for the table. Get your rod and line. Tell Brother Alf that he is to take you fishing in the small boat. That's what young mice like doing, isn't it? Who knows, you may land a fine trout or some sticklebacks. Run along now, young one. Happiness filled Matthias from tail to whisker as he bobbed a quick bow to his superior and shuffled off. Smiling benignly, the abbot watched him go. Little rascal. He must have a word with the almoner to see if they can find some sandals that were the right fit for Matthias. Small wonder the poor mouse kept tripping. Okay. What do you think so far? So far, so good? Take a quick break. That was the end of chapter 1. Short chapters. Okay. Chapter 2. Ugh. It's called Clooney, the Scourge. A high, warm sun shone down on Clooney, the Scourge. Clooney was coming. He was big and tough, an evil rat with ragged fur and curved, jagged teeth. He wore a black eye patch. His eye had been torn out in battle with a pike. A pike is a fish that lives in lakes, and it's very big and has lots of spiky teeth. And it's also very mean. It just eats and kills everything. It is a monstrous predator. Clooney had lost an eye. The pike had lost its life. Some said that Clooney was a Portuguese rat. Others said he came from the jungles far across the wide oceans. Nobody knew for sure. Clooney was a bilge rat, the biggest, most savage rodent that ever jumped from ship to shore. He was black, with gray and pink scars all over his huge, sleek body, from the tip of his wet nose up past his green and yellow slitted eye, across both his mean, tattered ears, down the length of his heavy, vermin-ridden back to the enormous whip-like tail which had earned him his title, Clooney the Scourge. Now he rode in the back of a hay wagon with his 500 followers, a mighty army of rats, sewer rats, tavern rats, water rats, dockside rats, Clooney's army, fearing yet following him. Red Tooth, his second in command, carried a long pole. This was Clooney's personal standard. The skull of a ferret was fixed at its top. Clooney had killed the ferret. He feared no living thing. Wide-eyed, with terror of rat smell in his nostrils, the horse plunged ahead without any driver. Where the hay cart was taking him was of little concern to Clooney. Straight on the panicked horse galloped, past the milestone lodged in the earth at the roadside, heedless of the letters graven in the stone. Redwall Abbey, 15 miles. Clooney spat over the edge of the cart at 2 young rabbits playing in a field. Tasty little things. Pity the cart hadn't stopped yet, he thought. The high, warm sun shone down on Clooney the Scourge. Clooney was a god of war. Clooney was coming nearer. Ooh, Clooney sounds like a real bad rat. I guess we'll see how they deal with that. Chapter 3. Beneath the great hall of Redwall, candles burned bright in their sconces. This was the cavern hole of the mice. What a night it was going to be! Between them, Matthias and brother Alf had caught and landed a fully grown grayling. They had fought and played the big fish for nearly 2 hours, finally wading into the shallows and dragging it to the bank. It was nearly 2 pounds in weight, a tribute to brother Alf's angling skills, combined with the youthful muscles of Matthias and their joint enthusiasm. Constance the badger had to be called. A badger is an animal in the weasel family, and it is big. They are huge. They're one of the biggest weasel animals. And I don't think you've ever seen one. So let me find a picture because Constance is in this book a lot. Badger. I'm not really sure how much like to scale these animals are, but that's what a badger looks like. Oh, you've seen honey badgers on your shows. So you kind of know that honey badgers are African badgers. Badgers. They live in North America and Europe and stuff. And anyway, that's what they look like. They're big. They're big. They're a lot bigger than mice. Gripping the fish in her strong jaws, she followed the two mice to the Abbey kitchen and delivered the catch for them. Then she made her farewells. They would see her at the Jubilee feast that evening, along with many other Mossflower residents who had been invited to share the festivities. Brother Alf and Matthias stood proudly beside their catch amid the culinary hustle and bustle until they were noticed by Friar Hugo. Busy as he was, the enormously fat Hugo, who would have no other title but that of friar, stopped what he was doing, wiping the perspiration from his brow with a dandelion that he held in his tail. He waddled about, inspecting the fish. Nice shiny scales, bright eyes, beautifully fresh. Friar Hugo smiled so joyfully that his face disappeared amid the deep dimples. He shook Alf by the paw and clapped Matthias heartily on the back as he called out between chuckles, "Bring the white gooseberry wine! Fetch me some rosemary, thyme, beech nuts, and honey, quickly! And now, friends, now," he squeaked, waving the dandelion wildly with his tail, "I, Hugo, will create a grayling a la Redwall, such as will melt in the mouths of mice. Fresh cream, I need lots of fresh cream, and bring some mint leaves, too." They left Friar Hugo ranting on, delirious in his joy, as they both went off to bathe and clean up, combing whiskers, curling tails, shining noses, and 101 other grooming tasks that Redwall mice always performed in preparations for an epic feast. The rafters of Cavern Hole rang with the excited buzz and laughter of the assembled creatures. Hedgehogs, moles, squirrels, woodland creatures, and mice of all kinds. Field mice, hedge mice, dormice, and even a family of poor little church mice. Kindly helpers scurried about, making everybody welcome. "Hello there, Mrs. Church Mouse. Set the children down. I'll give them some raspberry cordial." "Why, Mr. Bankful, so nice to see you. How's the back? Better now? Good. Here, try a drop of this peach and elderberry brandy." Matthias's young head was in a whirl. He could not remember ever being so happy in all his life. Winifred, the otter, nudged him. "I say, Matthias, where's this giant grayling that you and old Alf hooked? By the claw, I wish I could land a beauty like that. Nearly a 2-pounder, wasn't it?" Matthias swelled with pride. Such praise, and from the champion fisher herself, an otter! Tim and Tess, the twin church mouse babes, felt Matthias's strong arm muscles and giggled out loud in admiration. He helped to serve them 2 portions of apple and mint ice cream. Such nice little twins. It was only 3 months ago that he had helped Sister Stephanie get them down over tail rickets, and how they had grown. Abbot Mortimer sat in his carved willow chair, beaming thanks as one by one the new arrivals laid their simple homemade gifts at his feet. An acorn cup from a squirrel, a fishbone comb from the otters, mossy bark sandals made by the moles, and many more fine presents, too numerous to mention. The abbot shook his head in amazement. Even more guests were arriving. He beckoned Friar Hugo to his side. A whispered conference was held. Matthias could only hear snatches of the conversation. Don't worry, Father Abbot, there will be enough for all. How are the cellar stocks, Hugo? Enough to flood the abbey pond, Father. And nuts, we must not run short on nuts. You name them, we've got 'em. Even candied chestnuts and acorn crunch, we could feed the district for a year. Dairy produce? Oh, that. I've got a cheddar cheese that 4 badgers couldn't roll, plus 10 other varieties. Good, good. Oh, thank you, Hugo. Oh, we must thank Alf and young Matthias for that magnificent fish. What fine anglers they are. There's enough to keep the entire abbey going for a week. Excellent mice. Well done. Matthias blushed to his tail's end. The otters! The otters! A loud, jolly cry went up as 3 otters in clown costumes came bounding in. Such acrobatics! They tumbled, balanced, and gyrated, cavorting comically across the laden tabletops without upsetting as much as a single sultana. And I don't know what a sultana is. They ended up hanging from the rafters by a strand of ivy to wild applause. Ambrose Spike, the hedgehog, did his party piece. He amazed everyone with his feats of legerdemain magic tricks. Eggs were taken from a squirrel's ear, and a young mouse's tail stood up and danced like a snake. The incredible vanishing shell trick was performed in front of a group of little harvest mice who kept squeaking, He's got it hidden inside his prickles! But had he? Ambrose made a few mysterious passes and produced the shell straight out of the mouth of an awestruck infant mouse. Was it magic? Of course it was. All activity ceased as the great Joseph bell tolled out 8 o'clock from the abbey belfry. Silently, all the creatures filed to their allotted places. They stood reverently behind their seats with heads lowered. Abbot Mortimer rose and solemnly spread his paws wide, encompassing the festive board. He said the grace. Fur and whisker, tooth and claw, all who enter by our door, herbs and nuts, leaves and fruits, berries, tubers, plants and roots, silver fish whose life we take only for a meal to make. This was followed by a loud and grateful Amen. There was a mass clattering of chairs and scraping of forms as everyone was seated. Matthias found himself next to Tim and Tess on one paw, and Cornflower Field Mouse on the other. Cornflower was a quiet young mouse, but undoubtedly very pretty. She had the longest eyelashes Matthias had ever seen, the brightest eyes, the softest fur, and the whitest teeth. Matthias fumbled with a piece of celery and self-consciously turned to see if the twins were coping adequately. You never could tell with these baby church mice. Brother Alf remarked that Friar Hugo had excelled himself, as course after course was brought to the table. Tender freshwater shrimp garnished with cream and rose leaves, deviled barley pearls with acorn puree, apple and carrot chews, marinated cabbage stalks steeped in creamed white turnip with nutmeg. A chorus of oohs and ahs greeted the arrival of 6 mice pushing a big trolley. It was the grayling. Wreaths of aromatic steam drifted around cavern hole. The fish had been baked to perfection. Friar Hugo entered, with a slight swagger added to his ungainly wobble. He swept off his chef's cap with his tail and announced in a somewhat pompous squeak, My Lord Abbot, honored guests from Mossflower area and members of the Abbey. Ahem. I wish to present my pièce de résistance. Oh, get on with it, Hugo! After some icy staring about to detect the culprit, and several smothered snickers from around the room, The little fat friar puffed himself up once more and declaimed firmly, "Grayling a la Redwall!" Polite but eager applause rippled around as Hugo sliced the fish, placed the first steaming portion on a platter. With suitable dignity he presented it to the abbot, who thanked him graciously. All eyes were on Father Abbot. He took a dainty fork loaded precariously with steaming fish. Carefully he transferred it from his plate to his mouth. Chewing delicately, he turned his eyes upward and then closed them, whiskers twitching, jaws working steadily, munching away, his tail curled up. Holding a napkin which neatly wiped his mouth, the abbot's eyes reopened. He beamed like the sun on a midsummer morning. "Quite wonderful! Perfectly exquisite! Friar Hugo, you are truly my champion chef! Please serve our guests your masterwork!" Any further speech was drowned by hearty cheers. Yay, fish! All right, that's 30 minutes of this reading so far. The next chapter is only a page and a half, so I'm going to read it real quick. Ooh. Clooney. Clooney was in a foul temper. He snarled viciously. The horse had stopped from sheer exhaustion. He hadn't wanted that. Some inner devil persuaded him that he had not yet reached his destination. Clooney's one eye slitted evilly. From the depths of the hay cart, the rodents of the warlord's army watched their master. They knew him well enough to stay clear of him in his present mood. He was violent, unpredictable. "Skullface!" Clooney snapped. There was a rustle in the hay. A villainous head popped up. "Hi, Chief, do you want me?" Clooney's powerful tail shot out and dragged the unfortunate forward. Skullface cringed as sharp, dirty claws dug into his fur. Clooney nodded at the horse. "Jump on that thing's back, sharpish! Give it a good bite! That'll get the lazy brute moving again!" Skullface swallowed nervously and licked his dry lips. "But Chief, it might bite me back." Swish! Crack! Clooney wielded his mighty tail as if it were a bullwhip. His victim screamed aloud with pain as the scourge lashed his thin, bony back. "Mutiny! Insubordination!" Clooney roared. "By the teeth of hell, I'll flay you into mangy doll rags!" Skullface scurried over the driver's seat, yelling with pain. "No more! Don't whip me, Chief! Look, I'm going to do it!" "Hold tight to the rigging back there!" Clooney shouted to his horde. Skullface performed a frantic leap. He landed on the horse's back. The terrified animal did not wait for the rat to bite. As soon as it felt the loathsome scratching weight descend on its exposed haunches, it gave a loud, panicked whinny and bucked. Spurred on by the energy of fright, it careered off like a runaway juggernaut. Skullface had time for just one agonizing scream before he fell. The iron-shod cartwheels rolled over him. He lay in a red mist of death, the life ebbing from his broken body. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was the sneering visage of Clooney the Scourge, roaring from the jolting buckboard. "Tell the devil Clooney sent you, Skullface!" And they were moving again. Clooney was getting nearer. Clooney's a jerk. That's it for today. Love you guys. I hope you enjoyed the book, and we'll read some more soon. Bye.